We often think of inner peace as this final destination, something we'll get to once life finally calms down. But what if that's all wrong? What if peace isn't a destination at all? Today, we're diving into the pretty radical idea from psychologist Carl Jung, that peace is actually a set of habits you have to build, day by day.
So let me ask you something, and be honest with yourself. Are you waiting for peace? Do you kind of feel like it's just gonna show up once everything else in your life falls perfectly into place?
You know that voice in your head? I'll finally feel peaceful when this stressful relationship just figures itself out.
Or maybe for you, it's, okay, so I can relax once the money situation isn't so tight or when work isn't so completely insane.
Or maybe it's just, I just need to get through this weird, uncertain time. Then I'll be able to breathe. Then I'll find my peace. We all do it. We put peace on hold, waiting for the perfect conditions.
But here's the thing. Carl Jung, after basically studying people for his entire life, came to a totally different conclusion. And this is the big idea, the whole point of this explainer. Inner peace is not some condition that just happens to you. It's a practice. It's something you actively build. It's a set of habits. So let's dive into 7 of them.
Okay, so Jung believed that you can't really find peace on the inside until you learn how to manage all the chaos coming from the outside. So these first 2 habits, they're all about building healthy boundaries with the world around you, creating a kind of protective shell for your inner calm.
So habit number 1, and listen, this sounds so simple, but it might be one of the hardest things any of us ever learns to do. Stop fighting what you cannot change. It's about finally, truly accepting reality for what it is, not what you desperately wish it would be.
For Jung, a huge source of our suffering comes from this massive clash. On one side, you've got your ego, screaming about how things should be. And on the other side, you have the simple, cold truth of how things just are. Peace isn't about winning that fight. It's about learning to hold that tension, that gap between the two, without constantly resisting it. All right, that brings us to habit number 2, which builds right on top of the first. Know what is yours and what is not. This is all about psychological boundaries. It's about realizing how often we carry around emotional weight that doesn't even belong to us in the first place.
Jung had a name for this. He called it unconscious identification. And you know this feeling. It's when you walk into a room feeling totally fine, you talk to a friend who's super anxious, and you walk away feeling this vague dread yourself. Or when you're scrolling an angry social media feed and suddenly you're agitated for the next 2 hours. You've absorbed their psychological stuff without even realizing it. So how do you start building that boundary? It starts with this one simple but incredibly powerful question. The next time you feel a big wave of anxiety or anger or sadness wash over you, just pause for a second and ask yourself, is this mine? Just asking that question starts to create the little bit of space you need.
Okay, so we've put up some boundaries to protect ourselves from the outside world. But what about the chaos that comes from inside? Well, these next 2 habits are all about learning to draw boundaries with ourselves, to manage our own complicated inner world.
And this is where we get into one of Jung's most famous and maybe most misunderstood ideas: do your shadow work. Your shadow is basically all the parts of yourself that you've pushed down or rejected because, you decided they were unacceptable or bad.
But here's the thing about the shadow. It doesn't just go away. It just goes underground and starts running the show from there. And this is exactly where it tends to pop up, in those completely over-the-top emotional reactions, in those self-sabotaging patterns you just can't seem to shake, and, this is a big one, in the intense judgment you feel towards other people. Jung said that the thing you can't stand in someone else is very often a part of your own shadow staring back at you.
Habit 4 is a really interesting twist on mindfulness. The idea is to live in the present, but not to abandon the long view. Right? Being present is super important. We hear that all the time. But for Jung, a present moment that's totally disconnected from your past and your future is kind of meaningless. Real peace comes from being fully here, right now, while also holding a sense of where here fits into the bigger story of your life.
And that idea of a life story leads us perfectly into our final set of habits. These are all about purpose and meaning and self-knowledge, about finding your own true north.
So habit number 5 is so important. Find your own meaning, not one you just borrowed from your parents or your culture or what you think your friends expect of you.
Jung warned that if you live a life based on someone else's idea of meaning, you'll eventually hit a crisis, a really painful moment where you come face to face with what he called the unlived life, the ghost of the person you never allowed yourself to become.
Okay, habit number 6. This one requires us to see the huge difference between two words, loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is that painful feeling of being disconnected from other people. But solitude, that's something else entirely. It's the chosen, energizing experience of being with yourself. People who have real inner peace, they don't just put up with solitude. They actively seek it out, because it's the only way to hear your own voice above all the noise.
And that brings us to the final habit. And honestly, this one might be the key that unlocks all the others. Make peace with not being understood. Just think for a second how much of our stress comes from needing other people to get us, to validate us. Jung says the ultimate freedom is realizing that the deepest, most important parts of your inner life are always going to be invisible to most people. And that's not a tragedy, it's a liberation. It's the moment your self-worth finally stops depending on what other people think.
So when you put all these habits together, what do you get? Well, it's not about reaching some perfect, happy, blissful state. It's about engaging in the practice of wholeness.
And this quote right here, it just sums up Jung's entire philosophy so perfectly. Happiness, it comes and goes. It often depends on our circumstances. But wholeness, that's about integrating all the parts of yourself, the good, the bad, the shadow, everything. And when you do that, you create something much stronger and more durable, a kind of peace that doesn't get rattled every time the world throws something at you. Look, the whole point here isn't to walk away feeling like you have to master all 7 of these habits by tomorrow. No way. The key is just to start small. Just pick one. So what's your first step? Maybe this week, you just try practicing asking, is this mine, anytime you feel a strong emotion. Or maybe you just decide to consciously notice one really strong judgment you make about someone else and just get curious about it. Or maybe it's as simple as scheduling 15 minutes, just 15, of actual intentional solitude. At the end of the day, inner peace isn't something you find hiding under a rock. It's something you build, brick by brick, one habit at a time. So the only real question left is the one right there on your screen.